I've been thinking lately of where our focus on life is really centred. We have been through quite some tragic and catastrophic events over the last few weeks that have graphically grabbed our attention. The multiple stabbing by a deranged man at a shopping centre in the Sydney suburb of Bondi shocked the nation. Commercial news networks shelved regular programming to concentrate on the event, and we were subjected to the same video clips and sound bites being continually rehashed hour after hour. News anchors desperately searched for a sliver of new information to refresh their coverage. The 6 p.m. news bulletin carried a lengthy rehashing of the event, together with graphic images from the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. There was a mind-numbing onslaught of horrific information that all too often results in a mesmerising mental assault on our mindset. As the news cycle waned, fresh images of the stabbing of a Sydney clergyman in his own church, the subsequent riot that followed it, and the arrest of teenagers on suspected terrorism dominated the news cycle. The death of young women in domestic violent circumstances grabbed our attention, with rallies around the nation calling for governments to do something positive to curb that scourge of domestic violence. After all this, I felt a sense of great heaviness on my spirit, and I began to realise how quickly our focus in life can be influenced. All these circumstances need our thoughts, prayers, and attention. However, for our own spiritual and mental health, we need to know where the real focus of our life is, lest these events overwhelm us and distort our view of life. The reality is that we can become so overwhelmed by information overload from the media that we lose our focus, and our focus on Jesus is diminished. Dark and cheerless is the morn, unaccompanied by thee. Joyless is the day's return, till thy mercy beams I see. So, how do we, as Christians, focus our attention on that which will maintain a healthy and balanced life? The author of Hebrews offers some really beneficial guidance.
Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne.
In chapter 11 of Hebrews, the writer has paraded the heroes of faith as examples, and now, having evaluated their lives and their experiences, the writer brings it down to a very personal level and uses a couplet that reoccurs constantly throughout Hebrews. Let us. 12 times the writer will use this couplet, twice in this passage alone. And there is a sense in which, with its use, he is trying to engage and draw us into the mindset of his teaching. Hebrews is about gracious invitations. God provides and invites. The response is of our own choosing. There is no compulsion to accept any of the requests that come through these gracious invitations. However, there is a distinct downside in ignoring or refusing them, which may have eternal outcomes. The author attempts to create a participative interaction in which we may all learn from one another by employing this couplet, let us, which has a spirit of collegiality about it. It seems as though he poses the query, what can we encounter here, after surveying the religious heroes? These witnesses provide a substantial amount of proof that living a life of faith is not only possible, but also an exciting journey that should be experienced. Still, the author names sins as the things that prevent us from embarking on this journey of faith, things that divert our attention and our focus, things that weigh us down, things that overwhelm us and obstruct our path. It's possible that he is thinking more of these more subtle sins, like subliminal ones that are so hidden and subtle that we hardly notice them until they come as a surprise and easily trip us up, instead of the obvious sins, like murder and other heinous actions. The world we live in is cluttered, so we must get rid of those things that divert our attention and overwhelm us. If your computer is anything like mine, you have to get more storage because it can't handle all the files you have. In reality, we were informed that with the invention of the computer, paper would become obsolete and that everything would be kept on the hard drive of the machine. However, the reality is that we are soon overwhelmed by paper records, and in order to preserve them, we now purchase copy paper by the carton. To get rid of them, we require paper shredders. There is a lot of clutter in our lives, and I think that this congestion also affects our spiritual lives. If there was ever a time in human history to make life easier, it is in the 21st century. When you ask the simple question, who do men say I am? You're my Lord, my Christ. To you my life is sacrificed. You're the focus and direction, the meaning of my life. We feel as though we are being overtaken by the media material because we are always being inundated with new information and other viewpoints, even from reputable Christian publications, websites, and other sources. We receive endless offers to attend seminars, lectures, podcasts, Facebook promotions, live streaming, and other events. The amount of Christian data and information available to us is so great that we become completely overwhelmed by it. Eventually, the spiritual area in our life is entirely overwhelmed and congested. And as we try to manage it, the same thing that should have gotten us closer to God instead becomes an increasing obstacle. The author of Hebrews 12 says, "Let us strip off every weight that slows us down." We hear this again as we honestly and brutally assess our situation. The Bible often becomes clearer and more direct when we truly clear away the spiritual clutter, and we are able to hear God's voice and the Holy Spirit's promptings with greater clarity and focus. If we are to win this endurance race, we must be willing to make some sacrifices. It is necessary for us to be emotionally, psychologically, and physically ready to strip off every weight that slows us down. To finish the race God has set before us, we must occasionally focus like elite athletes and be willing to make significant sacrifices. A top athlete is aware that qualifying for the Olympic team will require them to give up a major portion of their lives. They are prepared to commit to early mornings, long work days, and the loneliness that comes with not being able to spend as much time as their contemporaries with friends and family in order to partake in the glory of winning a gold medal. When Jesus urged his disciples to follow him, he summoned them to a life which giving up everything, even their lives, was expected of them. The disciples of the 21st century must still travel the same path, and discipleship still involves sacrifice. Help me to be that sacrifice through mercies new each morning. And Lord, you know that sacrifice is all I have to bring. This matter of keeping focused and avoiding being overwhelmed is not an easy evening stroll in the park or a short sprint that lasts less than a minute. It's more like a marathon. You must be prepared for the long term and maintain a resolute commitment throughout, sometimes even at the expense of feelings and emotions. It's kind of like a hang in there mate moment, where the winner is the person who manages to stay to the finish line. We know the route because God has laid it out before us. We are well aware of what we are getting into, and we have not been encouraged to engage under false pretenses. It is therefore useless to moan when things are difficult. Instead, we should just put our heads down, draw on our spiritual reserves, and press forward to the goal of our calling in Jesus Christ. Every race has a finish line, and at the end of the day, we must ask ourselves, am I further along in this race, even though it may be a distant objective? The author of Hebrews is a strong believer that each and every one of us has a purpose and a destiny. We are to run the race God has set before us. We would do well to remember that God is a personal God with a unique plan for each of us, since every one of us has a unique race and a unique destiny. For our life to be significant and worthwhile, it needs to have meaning and fulfillment. I suspect today there may well be a feeling that life seems to have no meaning or purpose, which is maybe the biggest issue affecting individuals nowadays, especially young people. It's all about where our focus is, and keeping that focus on Jesus is a conscious decision that we have to make. The reality of humanity is that we are easily distracted. Consequently, in our spiritual pilgrimage, we have to constantly check and recheck where is our focus. We cannot just assume that we will stay on track. We are not on some sort of autopilot where we can expect to arrive at our destination without due commitment from ourselves. Take time to be holy, the world rushes on. Spend much time in secret with Jesus alone. By looking to Jesus, like him thou shalt be. Thy friends in thy conduct his likeness shall see. To help us keep focused, we have a super coach who initiates and perfects our faith. We are not just left to our own devices on this marathon of faith. The most effective coaches are those who have played the game, and Jesus is well qualified because of the hostility he endured from sinful people. The super coach is right beside us, keeping us focused, instructing and encouraging us every step of the way through his Holy Spirit. The question is whether or not we are listening to the coach's advice and encouragement, or whether indifference and spiritual pride muffles his words and results in us being overwhelmed. During his great invitation in Hebrews chapter 10, verses 19 to 25, the writer indicates that some tough application may lay ahead if we are to fully enjoy the privileges of being part of God's family in the most holy place. Let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep his promises. Holding tightly becomes an act of ongoing faith, and the writer has already given us classic examples of the heroes of the faith in chapter 11. It's as if God is saying to us, "You have seen how my heroes walked the way of faith, and now I'm going to give you advice on how to follow in their footsteps." In actuality, our faith is derived from and maintained by Jesus, and we are only able to do so when we have our eyes focused on him and a genuine relationship with him. All that is needed to maintain and grow genuine faith is found in him. The dynamic presence of Jesus in our life cannot be replaced by any amount of Christian literature or Christian community. Though important and beneficial, these pursuits will never replace Jesus' dynamic presence in our daily lives. The songwriter says, "Lord, unveil my eyes, let me see you face to face."
Lord, I come to you, let my heart be changed, renewed, flowing from the grace that I found in you. And Lord, I've come to know the weaknesses I see in me will be stripped away by the power of your love. Hold me close, let your love surround me. Bring me near, draw me to your side. And as I wait, I'll rise up like the eagle, and I will soar with you. Your spirit leads me on in the power of your love. Lord, unveil my eyes, let me see you face to face, the knowledge of your love as you live in me. Lord, renew my mind as your will unfolds in my life, in living every day, in the power of your love. Hold me close, let your love surround me. Bring me near, draw me to your side. And as I wait, I'll rise up like the eagle, and I will soar with you. Your spirit leads me on in the power of your love. draw me to your side. And as I wait, I'll rise up like the eagle, and I will soar with you. Your spirit leads me on in the power of your love. As I wait, I'll rise up like the eagle, and I will soar with you. Your spirit leads me on in the power of your love.
We live in a world that is cluttered and confused, and we need to get rid of those things that divert our attention and threaten to overwhelm us. It is a fact of life that we must direct our attention towards things that will keep our lives balanced and healthy. In order to complete the race God has set before us, we sometimes need to train like world-class athletes and be prepared to make some sacrifices. Ultimately, our choice of where our mind is focused determines everything, and we must consciously choose to maintain our focus on Jesus. My heart is fixed, eternal God, fixed on thee, and my unchanging choice is made. Christ for me.